Well, hello Internet, and welcome to part 6 of my Learn to Program series. In this part of the tutorial, we're going to take a very close look at lists. You're going to see your very first algorithm whenever we take a look at the bubble sort, and we're going to talk about list comprehensions and a whole lot more. If you haven't watched previous parts of this tutorial, you pretty much have to, and I provide a link here in the video to the first part, so definitely take a look at those so that we can build our understanding of how to solve problems in programming. And in the description underneath the video, I have a link to the transcript and all the code in this video, all completely free of course, and I have a lot to do, so let's get into it. Alright, so the very first thing I want to do here is I want to import some modules that we will use. I'm going to use the random module as well as the math module. And with lists, what we're going to be able to do is refer to groups of data with one name, because very often it is very easy and makes a lot of sense to group like data using just one name. And each item in the list is going to correspond to a number or an index, and you can think of them like this. So basically you're going to have boxes inside of this list, and this is going to be the index or identification number for each piece of data here, just like how people have identification numbers and products and so forth. And by default, the very first item in your list is going to have the index or the identification number of 0. And the great thing about Python lists is that they can grow in size, unlike other programming languages, and they can also contain different types of data. As you can see here, we have strings, we have floats, we have ints, and we have characters. So let's go in here and we'll create our very first list. I'm going to call this random list, and you're just going to go equals, and then you're going to throw in the data that you want, and the indexes will be automatically assigned. And there you go. So there you go. You know how to build lists now. You could also come in and create a list with a range, and what this is going to do is populate it using range. So let's say we want to generate a list, and it's going to have the values of 0 through 9. We would just throw a 10 inside of here, and there you go. Now you're going to have that automatically created for you. Another awesome thing about lists is that you can use many of the same functions with them that you've already learned in regards to how to manipulate and work with strings, because strings are lists of characters versus a list which can contain more than just individual characters. So we can come in and we can combine our lists just by going random list, or concatenate if you want to use the fancy term, 1, 2, 10. You're also going to be able to get the first item inside of your list quite easy. So let's say random list again, and that first item is going to be marked with the 0 index, and you can see that that is string. We're also going to be able to get the length of the string in exactly the same way that we were able to get it with strings, just by typing len and then random list, and there is the list of, or the length of it. We're going to also be able to use slice. So let's say we wanted the very first 3 items inside of a list. Well, we would just type in random list like that, and then we would start at the 0 index and get the first 3 items inside of there. We would then be able to cycle through all of these items. So first 3 like this, and on top of that we can get the indexes and have those print out as well. So let's just go and use the format here with this format, and then if we want to get the index, we would just type in first 3 dot and index for I, and then outside of there we can just get the actual item itself and run it, and you can see right here, prints out the index, then prints out the data that is stored along with that index. You would be able to also repeat an item. So let's say you wanted to print one of these list items out multiple times, you could do that. So let's just say we want to get the first item inside of there and have that print out on a screen 3 times. Well, we can do that, of course. I don't know if you'd actually ever use that, but there it is anyway. We can also check if an item is inside of a list. So let's say we wanted to find out if string was inside of our list. We would just type in the thing we're searching for, or you could put a number there or whatever, and then follow that up with your list you're searching for, and it's come back either as true or as false. Then once we know it's inside of there, we could come in and find the index of string, for example, in exactly the same way that we did previously whenever we said index, and then inside of here type string inside of there, and there it is. Index of string is 0. You could also find out how many times an item is contained inside of a list. So we could say how many strings, and that is going to come back as 1, of course. And to do that, we go first 3 and count, and then the specific thing that we're looking for, and it comes back as 1, as you can see there. Changing list items is also going to be very easy. You just target the index that you want to change, and then you could do something like new string, and then we could jump up inside of here and copy this, paste it, just to see that that did indeed change. And then the final thing I'm going to talk about is append, which is just going to put another item at the very end of our list. And how we do that is just by typing in append, and then you can type in whatever you'd like to put inside of there. So that's how that works, and if we do that and we run it, you can now see another's inside of there. Alright, so those are some of the basic things we can do with lists, and now we're going to get to our very first problem. Alright, so what I want you to do is generate a random list of a random list, meaning a bunch of random values inside of a list. And I want you to generate 5 values, and I want those values between the number 1 and 9. And to be able to do this, you're going to have to, of course, know how to create a list. You're going to have to know how to create a for loop, and you're going to have to know how to generate random numbers between the values of 1 and 9. And you can pause the video and go back and look at the notes in which I talked about random values right now. Alright, so hopefully you were able to do that, not that big of a problem. We're going to very first come in here and generate our list, and then we're going to create a for loop inside of here, and we are going to generate 5 values, so we'll throw 5 inside of there, and then we will come in and create or append each random value into the number list. And how we are able to come in and generate random values, if you remember from previous parts of the tutorial, and we want values 1 through 9, and that's how we do it. And then of course we can come in here and print out these values, in, and then this will be number list instead, and we will print I. And you can see right there we generated 5 random values. Do it again, and we can do it again, and we can do it again, and again, and again, and again. And actually I slipped up. This should be a 10, and we'll run it again and again, and now you can see the 9s inside of there. So there you go, guys. That is our very first problem. Hopefully you got it right. And now I'm going to jump in and talk about the bubble sort. Now, the bubble sort is just a way for us to be able to sort a list. And it is one of the very first algorithms, more advanced algorithms that people learn whenever they're learning how to program. Basically, how a bubble sort works is you're going to have an outer loop that's going to decrease in size each time that it loops. And the goal is to have, at the end of each cycle, is to have the largest number at the end of the list whenever the outer loop completes one cycle. Now, if this isn't making sense, don't worry. I'm going to create the bubble sort, and then I'm also going to show you exactly how it's run. So you're going to have a complete understanding here in just a couple minutes. Meanwhile, you're also going to have an inner loop. So you're going to have 2 loops, and it's going to start comparing indexes at the beginning of the loop. It's going to check the first item inside of the list that we're working with, and it's going to see if it is greater than the next item inside of our list. If it is, it's going to swap those values. So if this right here, the first item in our list, is a 3, and this right here is a 1, it's going to take the 1 and store it in front of the 3 and put the 3 over here. Then, whenever the inner loop completes, the largest number is going to be at the end of our list, and then we're going to decrement the outer loop by 1. Alright, so let's come in here and let's create it, and then I'm also going to show you a way of testing to see, and this is going to be a way that you can test all of your code if you ever have errors or if you want to better understand your code. I'm going to go through exactly how we can do that. So the very first thing we're going to need to do is create the value we're going to be decrementing in our outer loop. So I want to get the length of number list. Actually, let's come in here and let's grab our number list that we created previously. So blah, 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 blah. There it is. All right, so there is our number list. It's going to be random 5 values, and this is what we're going to be working with. So I want to get the length of our number list, and then after that, I want to subtract 1 from it. And the reason why is the list is going to use a 0 index. So the length of this, what I'm doing here is I'm trying to get each index number for each item inside of the list. And so because this guy starts at the value of 0, I don't need to, get the full length. That would give me an array out of bounds error, and I don't want one of those. Okay? You're going to see here if it doesn't completely make sense. So I said I'm going to have an outer loop, and it is going to cycle through as long as I is going to be greater than 1. Then I'm going to have an inner loop, and I'm going to have that have the variable value of 0. And here is the inner loop, and I'm going to say while j is less than I want to continue cycling through this guy. And if I get in a situation in which number list j is going to be greater than number list j plus 1, what I want to do is swap those. So how do I swap values? Well, I'm going to have to temporarily store one of the values in a temporary variable. So I'm going to say that I want to store the value that is inside of the index for number list, and then I'm going to go number list j is going to be equal to, whoops, go outside of there, it's going to be equal to number list j plus 1. And then I can take number list j plus 1, throw that inside of there, is equal to whatever I originally stored in temp. So that's how we can swap values in programming. Very important concept to understand if you've never seen that before. Now I'm going to throw an else statement inside of here. I'm not going to use it for this, but we will see it later. Well, actually, let's just throw in a print statement inside of here just so that we can use that later for testing so that we can see exactly how this is working. And then at the end of my inner loop, I want to increment the value of j so that we can continue moving from left to right inside of that loop. And then outside of this, I need to decrement I. So we'll go negative equal to 1. And then after our bubble sort is all done, I'm going to go for k in, and I'm going to print out my number list, and we can say print and k, and then let's say that I want each of these values to be separated with a comma and a space. I could do that. And then finally we can do a print that's going to give me a new line. And if I run this, you're going to see exactly that it prints out right here, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7. Run it again, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9. And you can see that it's properly sorting all of these values. But you might have no idea why it's working that way. So what I'm going to do for you here, and the reason why you get all those weird spaces there is because of this print statement right here. We're going to come in here and we're going to throw in some testing code so that we can see exactly how the bubble sort works. Alright, so if I'm trying to figure this guy out, what I'd like to do is, as I'm stepping through here, all this is pretty understandable, but I'd like to see exactly what's going on here whenever there is going to be a change to my code. So what I want to do is I want to print out exactly the values for these two indexes to check out exactly what's going on. And as you program, you're going to do this a lot. So I'm going to say something like is, and I'm going to get the first index greater than, and then get the second one. And then I'm going to call for format, and then I'm going to go number list, and I'm going to get j, and then I'll get the second item inside of here, and that's just going to be j plus 1. Another thing that I'd like to know is whenever any of these values are going to be switching. So basically what I'm doing in here is I'm just throwing in some print statements that are going to execute print information out on the screen whenever some type of change is occurring with my list. So right there, now I know that there is a switch being taken place in which we are going to be switching values. Where's the next place? Well, there is a situation in which these values or this value isn't greater than that. Well, in that situation, I'd like to come down here and be alerted to the fact that nothing has been switched. And what else might I want to know? Well, after this loop has exited, I'd also like to know the current state of my list so that I can track changes inside of my list during each of the loops. So here I'll say 4k in number list, and print out some information. We'll do a print, and we'll print out each of the individual items inside of there. And I'm also going to go end is equal to, and throw in a comma and a space. And is there anything else I'd like to do? Yeah, I'd like to come in here also and print a new line, and that's going to do that for me. And also I'd kind of like to be alerted whenever it is going to be the end of a round of checking all this stuff. And that would be whenever this guy right here is going to be decremented down here. So I'm going to come in here also, and I'm going to do a print. And let's put some extra emphasis on this. I'm going to say end of round. And now let's run it and see exactly how a bubble sort works. Okay, so here is our bubble sort. And as we're going through it, you can refer to the code here on the left side of the screen. The entire bubble sort is right here for us to look at. So the very first thing that we're going to see here is it's going to be checking, is 5 greater than 6? Don't switch, that's the logic. And you can see right here, 5 and 6 stay exactly where they are. Next time through, we're going to check if 6 is greater than 5. This is the comparison that it's making right here. Well, 6 is greater than 5, so we're going to switch. And now you can see the 5 and the 5 and the 6 and how the list has changed. Then we're going to check, is 6 greater than 1? You can see that 6 has moved from this position right here up to this position right here. Is 6 greater than 5? And you can see right here that it's got to the very end. The biggest number on the entire list after one iteration is at the end of the list, and that is the end of our cycle. And then the cycle repeats. It checks these two values right here, then it's going to check these two values right here, then it's going to check these two values right here, and you can see right here it now got to the end, and it knows that 5 is the greatest value right there. End of round, is 5 greater than 1, da 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 da, and we switch that. And then you can see that it's worked its way down. It's only going to be checking these final groupings of values. Is 5 greater than 5? Don't switch. And then it knows that it got everything in the proper order, and that is the end of the round, and that is the final list that has been properly sorted. And you can run this numerous different times, as many times as you'd like, to analyze exactly how the bubble sort is going to work with sorting of your lists. So hopefully now you have a good understanding of how the bubble sort works, and you also have a pretty good understanding of what to look for in regards to the code and what types of information to print so that you can properly test your code and better understand exactly how code that you may not understand is actually working. And now I want to jump in and show a couple more list functions and then do a couple more problems. Okay, so this guy up here is going to generate a list just like you previously saw, and this is going to print out information about the list. And inside of here I'm going to show you a couple different list functions. So if you want to sort a list, actually Python comes pre-installed with the ability to do that. And we're just going to call the sort function like this, and you can see that it automatically sorted everything real nice. We're also going to be able to come in here and reverse sort these different items, and maybe for homework you could go in there and figure out how to make the bubble sort work in reverse. Hint, 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 you're only going to have to change one character, which is pretty cool. And you can see right here that it did a reverse sort, pretty neat. You're also going to be able to come in here and change a value at a specific index. Just go numbered list, and then you're going to go insert, and let's say that I want in the 5th index, which doesn't exist, the value of 10 to be stored inside of there. There you can see that worked out. I'm also going to be able to come in and remove one of those items just by typing in remove, and specifically I'm going to go and remove the value of 10. You can see now it's gone. We're also going to be able to remove an item at a specific index, and to do that we use pop. And let's say I want to get rid of whatever's in the 2nd index. There, went and got rid of that. And I think that's a pretty good rundown of the different functions that are available to you inside of Python. So now I'm going to talk about list comprehensions, which are really neat, and then finish this off with another problem. Now, list comprehensions are just another way for us to construct lists in interesting ways. And you perform an operation on each item in the list. That is how a list comprehension works. So for example, let's say we wanted to create a list of even values. Well, we could come in here, create a list called even list, and then this is the operation we want to perform on each item inside of our list. And here we are going to generate the list. So in range, and let's say that we want to go and get 10 values. So what this is going to do is it's going to cycle through all of these different items, and the I that the range is going to generate, so this is going to start off at 0. This is going to give you 0 times 2, which has a value of 0. The 0 is going to go in the list. Then this is going to cycle to 1, 2 times 1, and 2 will be the next item in the list. and we can see that indeed this is going to work in even list, and type in print and I and run it. Whoops, forgot to put my I there. Sorry about that. Run it, and you can see it automatically generated all of these even values inside of that list. So in essence, this is a really cool way for us to take what would just be a static list, which we generated here with range, and multiply or do any type of calculation on each and every value that was generated by range. So pretty neat stuff, and really quick one-line ways to generate really interesting data. Another thing that's interesting is, let's say we wanted to perform multiple different calculations to generate our list. So let's come in once again, and let's create a number list, and it's going to have values 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And let's say I wanted to get the power for each item inside of that list to the power of 2, 3, and 4. How would I do that? Well, we could just create list of values is equal to, and then we're going to go math and power, and M is going to be the value that our range, or how we're going to refer to each item inside of this list. And then we just separate this by what different calculations we want to perform. So throw that in there, throw that in there, and then we'll just change this to 3, and we'll change this to 4, and we'll move this over so we can see what we're doing here. And then right here, after this bracket, we could actually go down to the next line if you'd like to keep everything nice and neat. And here is where we're going to cycle through each of these items. So each number list like that. And then we could, of course, come in here and generate our for loop for I in number list and print out I, and then throw in a new line as well. And we would run this. Whoops. And this is going to be list of values, and run it. And you can see that it automatically performed those calculations on each of those items and created a list of lists. So each of these is a list item on its own, which is really nice, meaning we can create what are called multi-dimensional lists, or just simply lists of lists, just like I called them here previously. And in regards to that, let's say we wanted to generate a 10 by 10 list of lists. We can call this a multi-D list. And how we would do that is, let's say we wanted each of the lists inside of the list to have a value of 0. We could do it like that. And we said that we want 10 of them, so there those go. And then we'll just say for I in range, and throw 10 inside of there. So that's how we can create a 10 by 10 list. And we would be able to come in and change values in this multi-dimensional list, just like we did with our regular list. We're just going to stack these boxes. So let's say we wanted the 0 and 1. I'm going to show you an example of exactly how these indexes work here in a moment. We could throw the value of 10 inside of there. And of course, we're also going to be able to refer to those items in exactly the same way. So 0, and there's 1, and run it. And you can see there is the 10 we threw inside of it. And you'd also be able to likewise be able to get any of the different items that are stored inside of here, like that. And of course, that's going to come back as 0, because up here we said we want a 0 inside of each one of those guys. So let's take a closer look at a multi-dimensional list, and I'll set it up so that you'll be able to see how the different changes in the index values are going to affect the different parts of our multi-dimensional list. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create a list. I'm going to do it exactly the same way. I'm going to have everything populated with 0 at the very beginning, and I want 10 of them. And for I in range, and I want to generate 10 of those guys. So that's going to create the list for us. And now what we're going to do is populate it. So I'm going to say for I in range, and I'm going to start at 1 and go to 10. Or actually, let's take this as, we can just leave this at 10 just to keep everything nice and simple. And then what we'll do is throw another loop inside of it to change the second value inside of here. So we'll say range and 10. And now it's time to populate these different list items inside of here. So we'll go I, and we'll go J. And then if we want to see what is inside of there, it's quite easy. All we need to do is throw what I and J's values are inside of there. So we'll say format and I and J, and then we can jump outside of here and print all of this information. So for I in, range, throw a 10 inside of there like that. And then for j in range, throw a 10 inside of there like that. And now we'll print out all the individual pieces, and then you'll have a better understanding of exactly how the different changes in the index values are going to affect the different places inside of our multi-dimensional list. We'll do like an and then let's say we want to separate that with like an or, just to show how those blocks are set up, and then a print statement for a new line. And if we run it, you can see exactly how they're structured. See, here is our multi-dimensional list. Actually, let's go in and let's make it a little bit smaller. So let's change this to 4, and change this to 4, and this to 4. This is what happens whenever I just write code out of my head and don't script things. Sometimes get a little bit unwieldy. Alright, so this is exactly how these are going to be structured. In the upper left-hand corner of our multi-dimensional list, you can see that the indexes are 0 and 0. And then as the second item inside of our list increments up, it's going to move across into the individual columns of the row. If we then want to target this part down here, we then increase the very first part of the multi-dimensional list, and so forth and so on. And that's how we're able to create matrices and be able to store boxes inside of boxes. But just remember, that's what these are. This is just an identification value, 2 indexes for a box inside of another box. And that brings us to our final problem of the day. What I want you to do is I want you to generate a multiplication table. And what do I mean by that? I want you to be able to generate all of this code right here. So we're going to create a multi-dimensional list, and inside of this multi-dimensional list, you're going to have each of the values of multiplication. So this is going to be your 1 row, your 2 row, your 3 row, the whole way through 9. And you should have no problem doing that based off of the previous little examples I gave you, especially with the last one. So you could pause your video right now and go and create that. Otherwise, I'll give you a couple hints. Basically, you're going to need 2 for loops to fill the cells in your multi-dimensional list. And that's actually just about enough information. If you want even more information, I'll walk you through step by step here. Let's say what you're going to need to do first is create the multi-dimensional list. And then the next thing you're going to have to do is increment with one of your for loops. So increment with outer 4. Then inside of this, you're going to have another one, increment with inner 4. You're then, of course, going to have to assign the value to the cell for each multiplication. And then, of course, you're going to have to output all of your data. And you're going to output your data pretty much using the same for loops and just changing this guy right here into instead a piece of code that's going to output the individual pieces of your multi-dimensional list. Alright, so now I'm going to show you how to do it. So we'll just come in here and we'll go multiplication table, and how we created a multi-dimensional list is 0, and then we said that we want to generate 10 of them because we want to go and print all those out on our screen. And then we're going to say for I in range, and this is going to give us the whole way through 9. Then down inside of here, we're going to have a for loop that's going to cycle through these values, I in range 1 through 10. And then you're going to have another one for the second part of the multi-dimensional list, and this one is going to have j. Everything else here is going to be precisely the same. Down here, we're going to then come in and store our value inside of it. So we'll just go I and j, and the value we're going to store is going to be I times j. And then we'll come down here and output our data. So we'll say, we'll just go for I in range, and we'll do 1 through 10 again. Create another for loop for I in range, and 1 through 10. And here we just want to print out the information that we have inside of here. So we'll say multi table, and I, make sure you put I inside of there, and j. And then I'll throw an end statement on here, and let's say we want to separate everything with a comma. And at the end of each one of these, throw in a new line, and there you go. That is all the code that is required. And if we run it, you're going to see that it just printed the 9s row. And why is that? Actually, you're going to see here, PyCharm is giving us a little hint. Variable I already declared in for loop or with statement above. Uh-oh. That means I need to come in here and change the I into a J, and that error message goes away. And now let's run it again. And there you can see, here's the 1s column, the 2s, 3s, the whole way through 9, and there is our multiplication table. So hopefully you guys got that right, and hopefully you learned a lot in this tutorial. If not, please leave all of your questions and comments below. Otherwise, till next time.